Ever wondered what it's like to drive a tour bus across Texas? From bizarre speed limits to strange onboard rules. Get ready for a hilarious ride through the wildest regulations you've never heard of. I've been driving tour buses for 15 years. 15 long, sunburnt, diesel-scented years on the wide, cracked highways of Texas. If you've ever cruised through Amarillo, cut down through Lubbock, or screamed silently into the vast nothingness between Marfa and nowhere, odds are you've passed me. Maybe you even waved. Maybe I waved back. Maybe I didn't. That's on the rules. Let me back up a bit. My name is Royce. Most folks just call me Driver, and that suits me fine. I'm not the chatty type. Never was. My job is to keep the wheels moving, the passengers safe, and the rules followed. Every last bizarre, unexplained one of them. My ride? She's a 52-foot steel beast with a V8 turbo diesel and deep navy blue skin that drinks in the heat like blood on asphalt. Custom upholstery, tinted panoramic windows, chilled cup holders, and a surround sound system that I'm technically not allowed to use between dusk and dawn. Why? That's on the rules too. She can hold 55 souls comfortably. I never take more than 45. Learned that lesson the hard way back in 2016. That was the first time someone tried a ride who shouldn't have. But that's another story. Maybe, if we make it that far. People ask me all the time what I love most about being a tour bus driver. They expect me to say something cute. Meeting new people, seeing the country, chasing sunsets. Truth is, I like the order. On the road, everything makes sense. The double yellow lines, the mile markers, the hum of rubber on concrete. It's all rhythm, all forward motion. It's away from everything. And when you're driving out here, following the rules isn't just smart. It's necessary. Because out here in Texas, the rules are different. The first time I noticed, it started off small. The rule book I was handed on day one was a thick blue binder with duct tape holding the spine together. On the cover, someone had scribbled "Read all." Not a joke in red Sharpie. It was a joke, I thought. I was 22, invincible, and halfway drunk off gas station Red Bull. I skimmed it. Rule number 1. Never look into the rearview mirror after mile marker 309 between 1:33 a.m. and 2:17 a.m. Rule number 2. Always knock twice before opening the cargo hold, even if it's empty, especially if it's empty. Rule number 3. If a passenger boards with no reflection, do not make eye contact. Smile. Nod. Drive. There were more. Pages of them. And not just weird, specific. Obsessively, ritualistically specific. Rule number 12. Do not drive over 70 miles per hour on FM 1960 after sundown. If you do, you'll start to see exit signs that don't exist. Don't take them. Rule number 16. Do not acknowledge the child in the third row who hums. He's not on your roster. I ignored them for 2 weeks. And then I broke a rule. Mile marker 309. It was a midnight route out of Wichita Falls, heading south. 41 passengers, all loud and drunk after a rodeo and some backwoods whiskey. I was tired, barely keeping my eyes open. The bus was silent except for the occasional cough, the rattling soda cans, and the creaking of suspension as we climbed a long, desolate stretch of highway. Mile marker 309. I checked the clock. 1:41 a.m. I forgot the rule. Instinctively, I glanced into the rearview mirror just to check. That's what you do. You check your passengers. Make sure everyone's okay. Nobody choking, nobody causing a scene. But the mirror didn't show them. Instead, I saw rows of empty seats. Every single one. except the last row, where a man sat alone, upright, staring back at me. He was wearing an old cowboy hat, shadow over his face, still as stone. I blinked, looked back at the actual passengers. Laughter, talking, people dozing off. Then back to the mirror, still empty, except for the man, his hat tilted. I ripped the mirror down, yanked it clean off the mount, threw it under my seat. My heart thundered for the next 100 miles. When we reached Austin, I opened the door and every passenger got off safely. Except one seat was still warm in the back. A crumpled black hat lay there. It hadn't belonged to anyone on the manifest. The dispatcher knows. I told my dispatcher the next day. I expected to get laughed out of the job. Instead, he nodded solemnly, opened a drawer, and handed me a fresh rear-view mirror, still wrapped in bubble wrap. "Just don't use it around mile 309, he said. "And for the love of God, driver, read the rest of the book." That's when it hit me. This wasn't a joke. More rules. You think it's just about driving a bus. But in Texas, the highways are older than the maps. Some stretches weren't paved over cow paths or riverbeds. They were paved over burial roads. Places where things weren't supposed to be disturbed. And we disturbed them. With rubber tires and fluorescent lights and screaming spring breakers. The rules aren't there to keep the bus safe. They're there to contain things, to prevent them from getting in or out. For example, if you pass an identical bus going the opposite direction with your same number, do not wave. You might recognize the driver. Do not acknowledge them. Keep your eyes ahead and continue on. If someone starts humming Home on the Range, and you haven't played it, pull over immediately. Let the bus idle. Wait 5 minutes. Then resume. If they keep humming, eject them. Every third Thursday, if a passenger tries to hand you a silver coin when boarding, accept it, no matter what. Even if they vanish before you reach your next stop. Passengers know something's off. They feel it. Some of them. The sensitive ones. The quiet ones who sit near the middle and never speak. They glance out the window when we pass certain trees that look too twisted to be natural. They shift uncomfortably when we drive over bridges with rusted signs and no names. One lady, elderly, red scarf, smelled like peppermint, once stopped at the front and whispered, "You're following the rules, right?" I nodded. She dropped her voice. "You missed one yesterday. Don't do that again." I never saw her on a roster. Not before or after. I thought it was all in my head. Until Dallas. That night is when the rules stopped being quirks and became a warning. I'll tell you what happened in Dallas next time. Just know this. There's a reason I haven't taken a passenger over 70 miles per hour in 7 years. It's not the fine. It's not the policy. It's because something boards the bus when you do, and it never wants to get off. There's a rule in the handbook, somewhere around page 48, scribbled in with what looks like red crayon. That says, never exceed 70 miles per hour between sundown and sunrise. Not even downhill. Not even if you're being chased. Especially if you're being chased. It sounded insane when I first read it. I mean, what kind of driver would need to be reminded not to floor it when they're being followed? That's survival instinct. But like all the other rules, I learned this one the hard way. Back in 2018, I had a night tour booked from Dallas to El Paso. A long-haul run with a crew of college kids on their spring break. 43 of them, drunk on tequila, high on energy drinks, and laughing at every damn thing. It was around 10:30 p.m. when we left the city, the sun long gone, stars clawing at the sky like someone had dragged nails across black velvet. The route was simple. Merge onto I-20, push west, and don't stop until the Franklin Mountains kiss the windshield. I was coasting along at a steady 68 miles per hour, letting the bus hum over the pavement like it was riding on glass. The kids were loud, laughing, screaming karaoke in the back despite my posted quiet hours sign. I didn't care. They were harmless. The road, however, was not. Somewhere past Sweetwater, the highway stretched out into a flat, bone-dry void. Nothing but tumbleweeds and the soft orange glow of sodium lights far in the distance. That part of Texas always makes me uneasy, like the desert's just pretending to be empty, waiting for the right moment to move. I was nodding along to a static-filled AM station when I saw it. Headlights, just behind me. Bright, too bright. At first, I figured it was just some impatient trucker wanting to pass. I moved to the right lane to give them room. But they didn't pass. They stayed behind me. Close. Closer than was safe. Their high beams didn't blink or dim. They just hovered. I tapped the brakes. No reaction. I glanced at the speedometer. Still 68. Then, just to get some distance, I nudged the pedal. 69 miles per hour. Still there. Then 70. That's when everything changed. It happened all at once. The world got quieter, eerily so. The kids' voices in the back dropped out, like someone had turned down the volume on reality. The engine noise dulled, as if I'd submerged the bus in water. Even the vibration in the wheels softened into a floaty numbness. My fingers gripped the wheel tighter. The bus no longer felt grounded. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean, it didn't feel like we were touching the road. Outside, the landscape had changed. I was no longer on I-20. The signs were gone. The barriers gone. The mile markers gone. All I saw were flickering fence posts running parallel to us, crooked and warped like they were melting. The yellow lines on the pavement now bled into one another, spiraling outward into a looping pattern that pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. And the lights behind me, still there. Only now, there were more. 3 sets of them. Then 5. Then 9. I watched them multiply like spores in a petri dish. I was frozen, eyes locked forward. But in my periphery I began seeing things. Figures pacing the roadside. Tall, thin silhouettes just standing there. No faces, only dark voids where their heads should have been. Like old static mannequins watching us pass. And then the radio clicked on, by itself. It wasn't music. It was a voice. Low, gravelly, not in English. It spoke in short, violent bursts of syllables I couldn't understand, but they scratched the inside of my skull like broken glass. A passenger screamed, then another, then silence. I checked the mirror, not to look behind, but to see my passengers. They were gone. Empty seats. Everyone. No bags. No jackets. No spilled beer or crushed soda cans. Just me. Just me and the echoing voice on the radio, and the ever-growing swarm of lights behind me. I wanted to slow down. I needed to, but something in the bus wouldn't let me. My foot was off the gas. The speedometer now read 73, then 75, then 77. The engine wasn't whining. It wasn't even working. I realized that with horror, the accelerator wasn't connected to the movement anymore. Something else had taken control, and I wanted to go faster. The exit that shouldn't exist. Off to the right, a ramp appeared. A glowing green exit sign hung above it, swinging in a wind I couldn't feel. No name, no number, just one word. Shelter. It wasn't on the map. Hell, it wasn't even on Earth. But the bus turned anyway. The wheel jerked left hard. I didn't fight it. Couldn't. We veered down the ramp, which felt more like falling than driving, until the landscape twisted in on itself. Sky below, dirt above, trees growing upside down, and the bus slammed to a stop on an invisible barrier. Darkness. Total. Then, one by one, the seats began to fill again. But the passengers were not the kids I had picked up in Dallas. They were older, ancient. Their skin was wrong, damp, papery, almost translucent. Their faces were blurred, as if caught mid-scream in a photo. They didn't move, just stared ahead, unblinking, as if waiting for something. And then the doors opened. The officer. I was pulled back to reality by the flick of red and blue lights. An actual patrol car had stopped us. Somehow, we were on a stretch of FM, 1053, miles from where I should have been. The officer walked up to the door, tapped the side of the bus. He looked like any other trooper. Aviators, broad shoulders, drawl thick enough to drag. "You were pushing 80, he said, glancing at his clipboard. "That's not just illegal. It's unsafe, son." I nodded, mute. My mouth felt full of sand. He didn't look at me, just handed over a small white envelope, unsealed. Inside was a single laminated card with bold black print. Rule number 27. Speed is not a suggestion. It is a containment measure. You broke it. Do not break it again. I looked up to question him. He was gone. No cruiser. No officer. Just heat rising from the empty highway and my reflection blinking at me in the rearview mirror. Except I hadn't put it back on. I dropped them off anyway. When I pulled into El Paso just after dawn, the college kids were there again. All of them. Snoring. Hungover. Alive. They never noticed anything wrong. They thought I was being weird for the rest of the trip. Kept asking why I looked so pale. Why I kept flinching every time I saw a signpost or glanced in the side mirror. They never saw what I saw. I don't think they can. Some people are just riders. They'll never see past the surface. The road is road. The bus is bus. The driver is just a guy in a cap. But for me, the moment I hit 70, I crossed into something I was never meant to touch. And it noticed me. And now I stay slow. You ever hear the saying, get there fast or not at all? I used to think that was about speeding tickets. Now I know. It's a warning. There are places on these roads that only reveal themselves when you push past the limit. Places stitched between minutes and miles. Speed is the trigger. And when you cross the threshold, you're no longer in Texas. You're in their domain. The mirrors fog. The signs change. The passengers disappear. And the road stretches into forever, no matter how far you drive. That's why I stay slow. That's why I obey. I've seen what happens when you don't. Every tour driver has a few landmarks memorized. Not for sightseeing. Those are for the passengers. We memorize the important things. Bathrooms that aren't covered in graffiti. Diners that won't give your riders food poisoning. Fuel pumps that won't short out in the heat. For me, it's the rest stops. I know them by heart. And I also know which ones don't belong. There's a rule in the handbook, rule number 34. It says, you must stop every 213 miles, no more, no less. If you miss the mark, you'll burn daylight you'll never get back. It's not about stretching your legs. It's not about safety. It's about rhythm, about syncing with something ancient buried beneath the asphalt. If you don't stop when you're supposed to, the road starts to change. Warp. You can feel it. One time, I made the mistake of skipping a stop. The missed break. It was a trip from San Antonio to Elkhart. Route 79, long, winding, and filled with stretches of pine-shadowed nothingness. I was on a tight schedule. A church group had booked a last-minute trip, and their coordinator was a woman named Mrs. Kinley, a sweet voice masking a mouth like a drill sergeant. "We don't have time for unnecessary stops," she told me before we left. "We'll eat on the bus. Just keep us moving." I nodded, told her I'd do my best. But in the back of my mind, I was watching the odometer tick closer to 426 miles round trip, meaning I need to stop at exactly the halfway mark, 213. Right around that time, we passed a sign, "Rest stop, 2 miles. Last one for 80 miles. I flipped on the signal, preparing to pull off. No, Mrs. Kinley snapped, stepping into the front stairwell. "Keep going. We're behind schedule." "I have to," I started. "We'll be fine." And I made a mistake. I didn't stop. The vanishing road. 5 miles later, something was wrong. The trees started closing in. Pine gave way to something older, tall, bone-colored trunks that bent at impossible angles, too smooth, too pale. The road narrowed. The yellow line in the middle peeled away like old skin. No traffic, no signs, no radio reception, no birds. I checked the clock on the dashboard. 11:46 a.m. Checked again 10 minutes later. Still 11:46. Then one of the passengers, an old man named Gordon, tapped my shoulder. "Son, I think we missed a stop." His tone chilled me. It wasn't accusatory. It was terrified. I nodded slowly. "I'll find the next one." "You won't," he said. "Not until you're allowed." The phantom stopped. The landscape had become unrecognizable. Even the sun looked dimmer, like it had been filtered through gray water. That's when I saw it. Up ahead, just beyond a bend in the road, stood a rest stop, but not one I'd ever seen before. It wasn't listed in my driver's atlas or the GPS logs. The sign above it read, "Rest Haven, EST 1901. The font looked hand-painted. The sign, ancient and splintered, flapped in wind I couldn't feel. It had a single building, a small concrete bathroom, and 2 picnic tables, both crooked and half sunk into the soil. A rusted vending machine leaned against a utility pole. And strangest of all, every parking space was empty. Not a soul in sight. I pulled in anyway. I didn't have a choice. My hands moved on their own. The weight. As soon as the bus stopped, the engine died. The doors opened with a soft hiss, though I didn't push the lever. Nobody moved at first. Then, slowly, one by one, the passengers rose and stepped off. Mrs. Kinley, too, her commanding tone gone, her face blank as she clutched her handbag to her chest like a lifeline. They didn't talk. They didn't stretch or complain. They just stood. Some sat at the crooked picnic tables. Some stared at the trees. One elderly woman stood directly in front of the rusted vending machine for nearly 10 minutes, not moving, not pressing a button. Then the sky blinked. It was the only way I can describe it. 1 second, mid-morning gray. The next, dusk. The entire sky had shifted color without transition, like someone had flipped a switch behind the clouds. Then the others began to hum. Soft, dissonant, not a song, just vibration. A low sound in their throats that made my chest feel tight and my vision swim. That's when I realized I couldn't leave. The keys wouldn't turn. The engine wouldn't start. My phone screen was dead. The road behind us had faded, like a chalk line wiped from a blackboard. I was trapped by my failure to obey. The one who knew. Gordon, the old man who'd warned me, stepped back onto the bus alone. He didn't sit, just walked to the front and leaned against the fare box. "You missed the mark," he said, voice even. "I know. They're not going to let you out until the time resets. You'll have to wait. And while we wait, they will test us. I stared at him. Who are they? He didn't answer, just looked out the window at the others. Don't eat anything here, he said. Don't drink. Don't respond if someone knocks on the door from outside. If anyone starts speaking backwards, get them off the bus immediately. Then he sat down, folded his arms, and closed his eyes. The wrong Kinley. It was hour 4 when Mrs. Kinley returned. Except it wasn't her. She looked the same pink floral blouse, same glasses, same tight bun, but her gait was wrong, too stiff, and when she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. She stepped onto the bus and didn't say a word, just stood behind me, breathing. I didn't turn around. Instead, I looked at the rearview mirror, which I had duct taped back up after the 309 incident. I didn't see her reflection. I kept my eyes forward. She didn't move for 20 minutes. Then she spoke, but it wasn't English, or anything I'd heard before. It was soft, sibilant, like boiling oil whispering a prayer. I stood up fast and spun. Gone. No trace. No footprints. No Kinley. Just a single pink carnation on the first stair step, browning at the edges. Release. Exactly 7 hours after we'd arrived, the engine coughed to life. The odometer ticked once. The doors hissed shut. Outside, the others returned. Calm, quiet, stepping back onto the bus as though nothing had happened. Except something had. They were all carrying something. Small tokens. A shell. A pebble. A bone. A strip of cloth. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. The road appeared again, behind the haze. I pulled out, and the sky brightened. By the time we reached Elkhart, it was 11:47 a.m. 1 minute had passed. Only Gordon spoke as he left the bus. Next time, driver, stop when they tell you to. Why it matters. That's why I follow the rule now. Every 213 miles. Even if it's just a shoulder off the highway. Even if it's a gravel lot with no bathrooms. Even if it's a rest stop I've never seen before and hope never to see again. Because the price of skipping is too high. You don't just lose time. You lose pieces of yourself. Minutes shaved off your life. Memories rewritten. Faces replaced. Some rest stops are placed by the Department of Transportation. Others are placed by something much older. You'd think after 15 years of driving the same highways, I'd stop being surprised. But the truth is, the roads in Texas never run out of surprises. They just get quieter about them. They stop yelling and start whispering. The curves grow more familiar. The shadows linger longer. And the rules, they stop being about safety or protocol. They become survival. See, some of the rules are clear. Don't look back past mile 309. Don't drive over 70 miles per hour after dark. Those are easy to understand, if not explain. But then you reach the pages toward the end of the handbook, the ones that look like they were added later, scribbled in different handwriting, some barely legible. That's where the weird ones live. Rules that make no sense until you break them. Like rule number 45. If someone requests row 7 specifically, deny them. If they insist, let them sit. Just don't stop for fuel until they fall asleep. Or rule number 53. Do not allow mariachi music after 11:11 p.m. It calls them. And rule number 60. Count your passengers twice. Then again, if the number goes up but no one got on, drive faster. These aren't warnings. These are patterns. Guardrails designed to keep you on the road and out of the places that leak through it. Because lately, it's not just the rest stops or the highways that are wrong. The passengers are changing. And I don't mean they're behaving badly. I mean, they're no longer human. At least, not entirely. The flute player. He boarded in Laredo. Mid-40s, maybe. Long black hair, a bright poncho, and a wooden flute strung around his neck like a pendant. Nothing odd at first glance, until he sat down and began to play. Softly. No tune I recognized, just low, breathy notes that didn't follow any musical structure. More like chanting in melody. A few of the other riders turned to look, irritated. One asked him to stop. He smiled, kept playing. I tried to ignore it, focused on the road. But after 5 minutes, I realized we were still driving past the same patch of desert. Same rock, same twisted ocotillo bush, same rusted-out road sign half buried in the dirt. It was looping. I blinked, checked the GPS frozen, compass spinning. I pulled the bus over, my hands acting on instinct, and told the flute player he needed to stop. He looked at me with eyes that didn't match his face. Too old, too empty. "You don't like the song?" he asked. "It's stopping us from moving." He smiled again and blew one long note. The passengers screamed, not from fear, from pain. Everyone on board clutched their ears, eyes bulging, teeth grinding like they were under pressure. One of them bled from a nose. Another began repeating the Lord's Prayer in reverse. I yanked the emergency brake and leapt from my seat, grabbing the flute from the man's chest and snapping it in two. Silence. The moment it cracked in my hands, the sky lightened, the GPS flickered to life, and the compass stilled. The loop broke. The road ahead unraveled like a coiled snake stretching straight again. The man was gone, not thrown off, not ejected, just gone. Row 12 sat empty, flute pieces clattering on the floor. Rule number 65 was added the next day in my logbook. Do not allow instruments aboard unless previously blessed by a priest or rabbi, especially woodwind. The girl with no ticket. She appeared in Waco, 11 years old, wearing a faded dress with cartoon horses. No reservation, no guardian. She didn't speak when I asked where her parents were, just handed me a worn postcard. It was blank. "Can't let you on," I told her. She stared at me, then nodded and walked away without a word. I thought that was the end of it, until I reached Temple, 40 minutes later, and saw her already on the bus, sitting quietly in the back. Row 9. I pulled over on the shoulder, heart racing, and marched back toward her. But as I approached, each step felt like I was walking into molasses. The aisle stretched. The rows multiplied. My vision blurred, like I was staring through wet glass. I turned around and walked back to the front. She was now sitting in row 3, smiling at me in the rearview mirror. I didn't ask questions. I kept driving. She got off in Austin. No goodbye. No exit sound. Just a whisper of cool air when the doors opened. Later, I found her postcard in the glove box. This time, it had writing on it. One word. Soon. That night, rule number 70 appeared. If a child boards alone and hands you a blank card, accept her presence. Do not ask her to leave. Do not speak her name, especially if you haven't heard one. The bag that breathed. They loaded it in Houston. A large black duffel bag, unzipped just enough to see coarse fabric inside. Something like burlap, something like fur. The tag listed no name, just a seat number, 21B. There was no 21B. The seats only go to 20. I tried to offload it. I really did. But every time I pulled it out, it would reappear inside. Sometimes in the overhead bin, sometimes under the front seat. Once I found it in the bathroom, sitting in front of the toilet like it was waiting its turn. At one point, I heard breathing coming from inside it. Not human, not animal. Something slow and steady, like a machine pretending to be alive. I taped it shut, put it in the utility compartment under the floor, drove in silence. At the next fuel stop, I opened the hole to check on it. Gone. Not just the bag. The entire compartment was empty. The tools, the spares, the chains, every piece of equipment I kept down there vanished. All that remained was a single train ticket wedged into the corner, dated 1907. Destination, Abilene by night. Rule number 78 was added that same night. Do not tamper with unmarked luggage. If it moves on its own, it is not your concern. Ignore it until it leaves. Passengers are not what they seem. It's not just one-offs anymore. Lately, every trip has one or two off people. They don't blink often. Their voices don't modulate correctly. Sometimes they laugh at things no one said. Sometimes they stare out the window, muttering in low tones, not to themselves, but to the scenery, like something outside is answering them. I've had riders who won't cast shadows. One lady whose reflection lagged behind her movements by 3 seconds. A man who asked to be dropped off before the junction of breath and bone. And worst of all, a pair of identical twins who swore they had different birthdays, 20 years apart. Each one of them has a rule now. I keep a separate logbook with numbered pages just for passengers. I call it the Manifest of Echoes. It's growing fatter with every trip. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm still driving people, or just escorting things from one threshold to the next. Still, I drive. Why? Because I'm good at it. Because I've made peace with the idea that Texas is bigger than maps will ever show. That its highways crisscross not just counties and states, but realms. And buses like mine, we're the ferries. The rules keep me alive. For now. But the final rule, the one penciled in at the very bottom of the last page, still terrifies me. It reads, "There will come a passenger who knows your name. Not your badge name, your true name. When they board, you will have one stop left. Make it count." I follow the rules. Every mile, every shift, every scream behind me that I pretended not to hear. Every rest stop I've obeyed without questioning. Every mirror I've covered. Every humming child I've ignored. Every bag I've left untouched. Because the rules aren't guidelines. They're binding contracts. A map for surviving the roads most people don't even know they're on. And for 15 long years, they've kept me alive. Until now. Because tonight, the final rule came true. The route that didn't exist. It started like any other run. Midnight departure from a small town called Perdido. Population maybe 800. Pickup from a dusty lot behind a closed gas station. The client was private. No roster, no manifest. Just a white envelope duct taped to the steering wheel. Inside, drive until the sky changes. Do not deviate. Do not stop for sirens. There was no listed destination. No final stop. Just coordinates that pointed west into empty land, where highways blurred into forgotten gravel, and even the crows refused to fly. The moment I started the engine, the radio turned to static. I was alone. No dispatcher. No GPS. Just the road. The final passenger. He boarded at 3:13 a.m. No stop. No town. Just a stretch of Tulane Road where the desert split like torn paper. I didn't even notice him until the dashboard lights dimmed and the bus hissed to a slow roll. The doors opened on their own. And there he was. A tall man in a dark coat. Too clean for someone out here. His eyes didn't catch the light. They absorbed it. As if they were bottomless. He stepped aboard without speaking. But when he passed me, he stopped. "You've done well, Royce," he said. "Better than most." No one had called me by my real name in over a decade. Not even the company knew it. Not even on my license. I hadn't spoken it aloud in years. It wasn't on any badge. Not in any registry. Just a name I try to leave behind. I said nothing. He nodded as if I had. Then walked to the back of the bus and sat down in the exact center. Row 11. The dead middle. I didn't need to check the rule book. He was the final passenger. The ride. I drove. Through pitch black, deeper than any night I've ever known. The stars vanished. The moon refused to rise. Even the headlights barely reached 10 feet ahead, swallowed up by a darkness thick enough to choke on. And in that silence, I felt the rules begin to shift. Not break. Transform. The signs I used to trust twisted into new forms. One read. Merge with memory. Another. Exit 0. Regret only. And my favorite. No turning back. Ever. The speedometer froze. The clock spun backwards. And the bus, my faithful beast of steel and diesel, felt lighter. Not just metaphorically. It floated. The wheels no longer touched asphalt. We were driving between places. Not cities. States of being. And all the while, the man in the back watched me. Eyes like twin eclipses. A presence like gravity. Conversations without words. He never spoke again. But I heard him. In my thoughts. In my bones. You've done well to survive this long. Most don't last a year. Some break within weeks. I gripped the wheel tighter, trying not to look in the mirror. I already knew what I'd see. Not myself. Not anymore. You've honored the contract. Obeyed the guidelines. You've transported more than you realized. Not just passengers, but cargo, memory, echoes, things that needed crossing. My mouth was dry. My lips moved, but no sound came out. You want to know what this is, don't you? What you've been doing. A long pause. This is not a job, Royce. This is a penance. The truth behind the routes. The bus slowed again. No stop. No signal. Just stillness. The doors opened once more, but no one was there. Just desert and distant thunder. Yet somehow, I knew this was it. The final stop. Not for him. For me. The man stood and walked down the aisle, his footsteps leaving faint impressions in the metal floor. He paused at the door. Looked at me. Not with cruelty. Not with warmth either. With something like recognition. You were chosen, Royce. You were given the wheel because you needed time. A chance to reconcile. But even time runs out. He reached into his coat and placed something on the dashboard. A mirror. Small. Oval. Silver-backed. Old. He left without another word. I stared at the mirror. My hand shook. My fingers twitched. But I looked. And I saw not my face. I saw every passenger I had ever failed. The ones who vanished. The ones who weren't supposed to get on. The ones I ignored. The ones who whispered warnings I didn't heed. Their faces stared back, stitched together in a shifting tapestry of grief and blame and silence. And in the center, my own reflection, flickering like a dying bulb. Eyes hollow, face gray, the engine of the bus groaning behind me like it too knew what I'd done. The choice. The engine still ran. The road still stretched ahead. But the bus was empty. No voices. No movement. Just me, the mirror, and the weight of 15 years of forgotten stops and broken rules. There is a voice now, not his. My own, from somewhere far inside. You can stop now. But another voice countered. Or you can keep going. 2 pedals. Brake or gas. I thought about the rules. I thought about rule number 99, the one I hadn't understood until now. Every journey has a final toll. Pay it willingly, or become the next stop. I press the gas. The road after. I still drive. But I don't pick up passengers anymore. Not real ones. They come in dreams now, or memories, or shadows that flicker across the seats when the sun is at just the right angle. The bus is different, too. Heavier, full of things I can't see, but I know are there. Sometimes I pass other buses going the opposite direction. Sometimes I see my own face behind their windshields. And sometimes, when I park for the night, I find a new rule scrawled into the handbook's last page. One that wasn't there yesterday. I never question it. I just obey. Because I know what happens when I don't. So if you ever ride through Texas, if your tour bus takes a wrong turn, if the driver won't look you in the eye, if your window shows the same tree again and again, check your seat number, count the passengers, and whatever you do, don't say the driver's name, not unless you know it. And if you do, be ready to pay your fare.